When you think about returning home after a long, exhausting trip, there's just this universal expectation of relief. You drop your bags, you sink into your own couch, and, well, everything is exactly where you left it. It's supposed to be your safe haven, the finish line, right?
Yeah, exactly. The one place where you can finally let your guard down. I mean, we are just so conditioned to believe that the story is over once you reach the front door.
But then you look at one of the oldest survival stories we have, and suddenly that finish line is actually the starting line for a whole new nightmare.
So today we are taking a deep dive into the first 9 books of Homer's Odyssey.
And we are looking at this through the Samuel Butler translation, which is great. But we're focusing not just on the poetry, but on the raw, gritty survival manual hidden inside it. Right. We are looking at a man who has been away from home for nearly 20 years, the son who basically grew up without him, and the incredible and honestly often terrifying obstacles standing in the way of their reunion. Okay, let's unpack this, because the state of Ulysses' home, Ithaca, isn't just messy. It's a full-blown disaster zone.
A total collapse of order, really. Ulysses has been missing for years after the end of the Trojan War. I mean, almost everyone just presumes he is dead at the bottom of the ocean.
Yeah, which is a fair assumption in the ancient world.
Right. And his estate hasn't just fallen into disrepair, it has been actively hijacked by a mob of suitors. These are the young, arrogant nobles of the region, led by men like Antinous and Eurymachus.
They just moved in. They moved right into Ulysses' house to force his wife Penelope to marry one of them.
Exactly. And while they wait for her to break, they are basically waging a war of attrition on her resources. Day after day, they're slaughtering his oxen, his sheep, his fat goats, and just draining his cellars of well-ripened wine.
It's basically a hostile takeover. Penelope is entirely on her own, trying to hold off a literal army of, well, frat boys who are eating her out of house and home.
That's a perfect way to put it, yeah.
Which brings us to one of the most brilliant stalling tactics in all of literature. She tells this mob, I will pick one of you, but please wait until I finish weaving this burial shroud for my father-in-law, Laertes.
Right, because it would be a massive public scandal if a man of his stature died without a proper pall.
Exactly. So she sets up this massive tambour frame in her room.
And for anyone unfamiliar with the term, a tambour frame is essentially a giant standing loom or hoop. It holds a massive piece of fabric completely taut so you can embroider or weave over a large surface area.
So it's not a small hide-in-the-corner kind of thing.
No, not at all. It is highly visible, incredibly laborious, just a huge setup.
It is the ultimate prop for looking busy. I mean, she weaves on this giant frame all day where everyone can see her, but then every single night, by torchlight, she secretly unpicks all the stitches she just made.
It's so clever.
It's like pretending your internet is broken to get out of a Zoom meeting, but keeping the ruse up for 3 straight years.
Oh, that is exactly what it is. It is a masterpiece of psychological warfare. I mean, she keeps them on the hook, appeasing their demands while practically doing nothing.
But eventually, the scheme collapses.
Yeah, it does. And it doesn't fail because the suitors are clever or anything. It fails because of internal rot. One of Penelope's own maids betrays her and reveals the secret.
And we really have to ask why a maid would do that to her queen, right? Because it wasn't just a slip of the tongue. The text implies a much deeper betrayal.
Yeah, a lot of these maids were actually sleeping with the suitors.
Right. They had basically become a fifth column inside Penelope's own home, totally loyal to the men trying to usurp the throne. And this toxic, paranoid environment is exactly where Ulysses' son, Telemachus, is trapped.
Yeah, he is coming of age in a house where he has absolutely no power. He's just brooding, feeling entirely defeated by the sheer number of these invaders.
But this is where the goddess Minerva intervenes. She disguises herself first as a chief named Mentes and later as Mentor, and she essentially injects Telemachus with the courage he so desperately needs.
She tells him to stop wallowing, basically. She says, call a public assembly, publicly denounce the suitors, and then secretly charter a ship to go find news of your father.
So Telemachus finally takes action, which is so satisfying. He goes on this reconnaissance mission, visiting King Nestor in Pylos, and then traveling to Sparta to see King Menelaus.
Right.
Now, reading this, I found myself getting a little frustrated, honestly. Menelaus is living in this palace that literally gleams with gold, silver, amber, and ivory. He is incredibly rich and powerful now.
He is, yeah, very comfortable.
So if Menelaus is such a loyal friend to Ulysses, why doesn't he just lend Telemachus a Spartan army to go back to Ithaca and clear out those suitors in one afternoon?
Well, it's a completely logical question, but Menelaus has his own profound limitations born out of immense trauma. I mean, the Trojan War broke all of these men, even the victors.
Yes.
Menelaus tells Telemachus the story of his own agonizing, terrifying journey home. He was trapped on an island in Egypt for 20 days. The winds were completely dead, and his crew was slowly starving to death.
Just stuck there.
Right. Finally, a minor goddess took pity on him and told him his only way out was to ambush her father, Proteus, the old man of the sea.
And Proteus is a shapeshifter. To even get close to him, Menelaus and his men had to hide under fresh, stinking sealskins on this blazing hot beach.
Oh, the smell.
Yeah, Menelaus describes the smell of these dead seals as so vile they nearly lost their minds. They only survived because the goddess secretly put ambrosia under their noses to block the stench. Just a deeply unpleasant, nightmarish ordeal.
And that was only the waiting part. When Proteus finally came out of the water to sleep among the seals, Menelaus had to physically tackle this god.
Which sounds impossible.
It almost was. As he held on, Proteus violently shapeshifted into a lion, a dragon, a leopard, a massive boar, running water, and even a towering tree.
Wait, he turned into water and a tree while a guy was holding on to him?
Exactly. Menelaus had to grip this mutating, terrifying force of nature till the god finally gave up and spoke. And Proteus is the one who revealed that Ulysses is still alive.
Right, being held prisoner on a distant island by a nymph named Calypso. So Menelaus can offer Telemachus information, but his core lesson is that you cannot just brute force your way through the will of the gods.
Exactly. An army wouldn't solve a divine curse.
But knowing his father is alive is one thing, actually rescuing him is another. Because while Telemachus is safe in a golden palace in Sparta, Ulysses is just rotting away on a rock in the middle of nowhere. Let's physically shift our focus to Ogygia, Calypso's island, where the father is trapped.
Right, so Jupiter sends the messenger god, Mercury, down to Ogygia with a non-negotiable order for Calypso. She must release her captive.
What's fascinating here is Calypso's furious, incredibly pointed response. She doesn't just politely bow her head and agree.
Oh, not at all. She calls out the blatant hypocrisy of the male gods in power. She says essentially, you gods take mortal lovers all the time, but the moment a goddess chooses a mortal man, you destroy him.
Yeah, she actually brings up receipts. She cites how Diana killed Orion and how Jupiter himself struck down an Asian with a thunderbolt after he slept with Ceres.
She is pointing out a massive, fatal double standard in the divine hierarchy.
She is furious, but she knows she can't fight Jupiter. So she goes down to the beach to tell Ulysses he can finally leave. And the situation we find Ulysses in is just wild.
It really is.
He spends his days sitting on the rocky shore, staring at the barren ocean, crying his eyes out from homesickness. Calypso literally offers him immortality if he stays.
She even points out the obvious, that she is an immortal goddess, far more beautiful and ageless than his mortal wife Penelope will ever be.
And he turns it down.
He does, without hesitation.
It's like turning down a billionaire lifestyle on a private tropical island to return to a messy, complicated, stressful life in your hometown. He actively chooses the human experience, with all the pain, the aging, and the eventual death that comes with it. He wants his real life back.
It perfectly highlights that his drive isn't for pleasure or ease. It is for identity and belonging. So he builds a raft. Calypso gives him an axe and an adze.
Wait, I meant to ask about this. The text says he chops down 20 trees and adzes them smooth. What exactly is an adze, and how does it differ from just using an axe?
Yeah, so think of it like a heavy-duty carving tool. While an axe blade is parallel to the handle for chopping downwards, an adze has a blade that sits horizontally.
Like perpendicular to the handle.
Exactly, almost like a hoe. You swing it toward yourself to shave and flatten the surface of a log. It takes immense skill to use without, taking off your own foot.
Good to know.
Yeah.
So Ulysses chops these trees, meticulously adzes the timbers flat, makes sails out of linen, and in 4 days he sets off on the open ocean.
But on the 18th day of his voyage, the sea god Neptune spots him.
And Neptune hates Ulysses for blinding his son, the Cyclops, which we'll get to. And he unleashes a massive multi-directional hurricane. The physical details the text gives us here are just brutal.
Yeah, this is not a romanticized cinematic shipwreck.
Not at all. Ulysses is weighed down by the heavy, ornate clothes Calypso gave him. The mast snaps in half, hitting him in the head. He is thrown underwater and held down for a terrifyingly long time.
A sea goddess named Ino actually takes pity on him and gives him a magical veil to keep him from drowning. She tells him to abandon the heavy raft and just swim.
But even with divine help, the ocean nearly breaks him. When he finally gets near the Phaeacian coast, the surf is crashing against sheer, smooth cliffs.
And a massive wave grabs him and smashes him against the rock face.
Yes, he desperately clings to the stone, but the water pulls back out to sea so violently that the skin is ripped entirely from his hands. Homer compares it to a polypus, an octopus being torn from its rocky bed with bits of stone still stuck to its torn suckers.
Ah, that imagery, it makes you wince just visualizing it.
It really does. He is eventually washed into a river mouth, kisses the dry earth, and crawls up into the dark woods. He buries himself in a pile of dead leaves just to keep his core temperature up.
The translation describes it as a farmer hiding a fire seed in the ashes to keep the ember alive for the next day. I love that metaphor.
It's beautiful, because he is stripped of everything, his ships, his men, his armor, his wealth, his clothes, all gone. He is down to the absolute bare ember of his own existence.
Exactly. He has survived the raw, uncaring power of nature, but waking up naked and battered presents a completely different kind of obstacle.
Right, his next challenge isn't a storm. It is navigating a complex, highly civilized, and highly suspicious human society without getting killed or enslaved.
Right. So he wakes up to the sound of young women shouting, it's Princess Nausicaa and her maids who have come down to the river to wash the palace linens and are playing with a ball.
Ulysses emerges from the bushes, completely naked, holding a single leafy branch over his waist. The text says he looks like a starving, weather-beaten mountain lion driven by hunger.
Which is terrifying.
Completely terrifying.
Yeah.
Now put yourself in this situation. How does a naked, crusty, scary stranger creeping out of the bushes not immediately get arrested, stabbed, or chased off by the royal guards?
Well, because of his supreme emotional intelligence, the maids absolutely panic and run away in terror. But Nausicaa, who is empowered by Minerva, stands her ground.
Okay, so he has an opening.
Yes. Now, the traditional expected gesture for a suppliant begging for their life in this ancient culture would be to run up and firmly grasp the person's knees.
Which would be a terrible idea here.
A disastrous idea. Ulysses reads the room perfectly. He realizes a naked, filthy, wild-looking man lunging at a young princess is going to end in his execution.
So he stops.
Exactly. He stands far back. If we connect this to the bigger picture, this is where we see that Ulysses' true superpower isn't his sword or his shield, it is his cunning.
He uses what the text calls honeyed and persuasive language.
Yes, he flatters her flawlessly. He compares her to a goddess, wondering aloud if she is Diana herself. Then he compares her to a beautiful, rare young palm tree he once saw growing near the altar of Apollo in Delos.
He completely charms her. He de-escalates the situation entirely with his words, and Nausicaa is actually incredibly politically savvy herself, right?
Very much so.
She gives him clothes and food, but she explicitly tells him they cannot walk into the city together. The Phaeacians are amazing sailors, but they are very cliquey, insular, and deeply suspicious of outsiders.
She knows if she, an unmarried royal princess, walks into town with this handsome, mysterious stranger, the rumor mill will destroy her reputation.
Yeah, she's very smart, so she gives him precise directions to sneak into her father's palace on his own.
And Ulysses makes it to the palace of King Alcinous and Queen Arete. It is just a dazzling display of wealth bronze walls, golden doors, silver mastiffs guarding the entrance.
Very intimidating.
Extremely. But he throws himself at the queen's knees, and eventually, recognizing his noble bearing, they welcome him. They throw a massive feast and organize athletic games in his honor.
Here's where it gets really interesting. During these games, Ulysses is just sitting on the sidelines, grieving his lost crew and his situation. A young, arrogant Phaeacian named Euryalus decides to provoke him.
Right?
He essentially says, "You don't look like an athlete. You look like a grasping trader who only cares about cargo and profit."
Which is a massive, insulting breach of hospitality in that culture.
Oh, huge.
Yeah.
But Ulysses doesn't just absorb the insult. He delivers a devastating verbal comeback. He tells Euryalus that he is walking physical proof that the gods do not give all their gifts to one person.
It's such a burn.
He says, "You are as handsome as a god, but your mind is completely empty." Then, without even taking his heavy cloak off, Ulysses marches over and grabs a discus that is far heavier and more massive than the ones the locals use.
He swings it back and throws it so hard it literally hums in the air.
Yes, it flies way past all their marks, completely silencing the crowd. It's this incredible flex of raw physical power, backed up by razor-sharp intellectual wit.
It really is. Later that evening during the feast, the blind bard Telemachus starts singing. He sings about the Trojan War, specifically the stratagem of the Trojan horse, the very trick Ulysses himself invented.
But instead of feeling proud of his victory, the song breaks Ulysses. The trauma bubbles instantly to the surface.
He breaks down weeping, and Homer uses a profound, devastating simile here.
He cries as piteously as a woman who has thrown herself on the body of her husband who just died defending their city, while her enemies are beating her back and shoulders with spears, dragging her away into slavery.
He is the victor of the war, but he is crying with the exact agony of the victims he created.
It's incredibly heavy. King Alcinous sees this breakdown and finally demands, "Stop the music. Who are you? Why do you weep at the fate of Troy?"
And this forces Ulysses to drop his anonymity. This is the moment he finally tells his own story.
He begins with that famous, confident declaration, "I am Ulysses, son of Laertes, renowned among mankind for all manner of subtlety."
Right. And then he begins to recount the immediate aftermath of the Trojan War. What's crucial here is that he doesn't paint himself as a flawless hero. He openly talks about his early disastrous failures in leadership.
Like the raid on the Cicones.
Precisely. Right after leaving Troy, they sack the city of the Cicones. But instead of taking the plunder and leaving immediately as Ulysses orders, his men mutiny.
They were riding the adrenaline of the war, lacking all discipline.
Yeah, they decide to stay on the beach to drink wine and feast on slaughtered cattle. That fatal delay allows the Cicones to regroup with their neighbors and launch a massive counterattack.
And Ulysses loses 6 men from every single ship. It's like winning the championship game, partying way too hard in the opposing team's city, and getting absolutely decimated for it.
And they don't learn. Shortly after, a storm blows them to the island of the Lotus Eaters.
Oh, this part is wild. The men eat this flower that acts like a powerful narcotic. They lose all memory of their families, all desire to ever go home.
Ulysses literally has to drag them back to the ships while they are crying and fighting him. He ties them under the rowing benches just to save them from themselves.
But those leadership struggles are nothing compared to what happens next. They sail to the island of the Cyclops, a lawless agricultural race of giant shepherds.
Right.
Ulysses, driven by this insatiable curiosity, takes 12 of his men to explore a cave, and they end up trapped inside when the owner, Polyphemus, returns.
And this encounter is pure, unadulterated horror. Polyphemus seals the cave with a massive stone and discovers the men.
When Ulysses tries to invoke the laws of hospitality and the wrath of the gods, the giant just laughs. The Cyclops do not care about Jupiter or human laws.
The details in the text here are pure nightmare fuel. Polyphemus grabs 2 of Ulysses' men and dashes them against the stone floor like puppies.
Just brutal. Their brains splash out on the ground.
Yeah, and then he eats them raw flesh, bones, marrow, and entrails. He washes this horrific meal down with a massive drink of neat milk and goes to sleep.
Now, wait a minute. Neat milk, like ordering a whiskey neat.
Yes, undiluted. In ancient Greek culture, drinking wine unmixed with water was considered barbaric and dangerous.
Oh, I see.
So Homer using the term neat for milk is a subtle way of highlighting that this giant is entirely uncivilized. He consumes everything, whether it's human flesh or animal milk, in its rawest, most unrefined, brutal state.
Okay, so the giant drinks his raw milk and passes out. Ulysses is standing right there in the dark with his sword drawn. Why doesn't he just stab the giant in the liver and end the nightmare right there?
Because of his incredible critical thinking in the midst of a panic, Ulysses realizes that if he gives into his anger and kills the giant, he has just sealed his own tomb.
Right, because of the door.
Exactly. The stone blocking the door is so impossibly heavy that 22 strong, 4-wheeled wagons couldn't budge it. They absolutely need the giant alive to open the door in the morning.
It's like being locked inside a massive bank vault with a ticking time bomb. You can't just blow up the bomb, because if you do, the vault stays sealed forever and you suffocate. You need the bomb to open the door.
That's a great analogy. So Ulysses forces himself to wait in the dark, listening to his men weep, even as Polyphemus wakes up and eats 2 more men for breakfast the next day.
And this horrific waiting game leads to the famous no-men trick.
Ah.
Ulysses had brought a skin of incredibly strong, sweet wine given to him by a priest named Marin.
Usually you would dilute this specific wine with 20 parts water to 1 part wine. It's unimaginably potent. But Ulysses gives it to the giant completely undiluted.
The giant loves it, of course, gets incredibly drunk, and asks for Ulysses' name so he can give him a guest gift. And Ulysses tells him, "My name is No Man."
And the giant's twisted, sadistic gift is promising to eat No Man last.
Such a dark detail.
Then the giant passes out, vomiting human flesh and wine all over the cave floor. Ulysses and his surviving men take a massive green olive wood club they had sharpened and charred in the fire.
Right.
They drive the glowing red-hot point straight into the giant's single eye. The visceral description here is stunning. Homer says the eye hissed around the burning wood exactly like the loud hiss a blacksmith makes when plunging a hot axe into cold water to temper the iron.
The giant wakes up screaming in agony, ripping the wood out of his eye. The other Cyclops who live on the mountain hear the screaming and come running.
They shout through the closed cave door, asking who is hurting him, who is stealing his sheep.
And Polyphemus yells back, "No man is hurting me. No man is killing me by Strahd."
So the other giants assume it is just a sickness sent by the gods, tell him to pray, and they walk away, leaving him completely alone.
It is a brilliant play on language that saves their lives. The next morning, the blinded giant rolls the stone back to let his sheep out to graze. He sits in the doorway, feeling the backs of the sheep to make sure the men aren't escaping.
But Ulysses had tied his men underneath the bellies of the thick-fleeced rams.
They slip right past the giant's searching hands, silent and unseen, and escape back to the ships. So what does this all mean? When you look at everything he's been through in just these first 9 books, that one sequence in a cave tells you everything you need to know about who Ulysses really is.
I agree completely.
It was his unchecked curiosity that got them trapped in the cave to begin with. He just had to see what kind of monster lived there. But it was his immense, painful patience in not killing the giant immediately, and his supreme linguistic wit with the no-man pun that got the survivors out alive.
We are seeing the profound cost of war, the intense desire for the messy reality of home over an eternal, stagnant paradise, and the constant triumph of intellect over brute force.
Yeah.
Whether he is facing a divine hurricane, a suspicious foreign society, or a man-eating giant, raw strength is never what saves him.
And that brings us to something I really want you to reflect on after we wrap up today. We've talked about his sword, his devastating discus throw, his military tactics. But Ulysses' greatest weapon wasn't his spear or his shield. It was his narrative control.
Oh, absolutely.
Whether he is flattering a young princess to save his life on the beach, tricking a man-eating giant with a clever pun, or holding a court of foreign nobles completely spellbound with the history of his own trauma, Ulysses is the ultimate storyteller. He survives by shaping the reality around him with his words.
It makes you wonder about the immense power of the stories we tell, both to others to navigate the world and to ourselves just to survive the night.
The provocative thought to leave you with is this. In your own life, when you are standing at what feels like a finish line that is suddenly turned into a nightmare, when you face insurmountable obstacles, how often is the solution found not in fighting harder, but in completely changing the narrative you present to the world?
It's a really powerful question.
Something to think about the next time you find yourself navigating muddy waters. Thank you for joining us for this deep dive.